Hello, you malty, mouse munching malt moggies, and thank you to Mike Addison Sape for the malt mention, which is, of course, what you get, a malt mention, when I am about to start another whisky review. So welcome to my channel. It's called Ralphie.com, and it's where I review good quality spirits in a little bit of detail so as to help you with your purchasing decisions and, importantly, your malt moments. This is Ralphie Review 957, and I am going to be reviewing Bunnahabhain 12-year-old Islay unpeated single malt. I've reviewed this a few times in the past, and recently, in fact in Ralphie Review 953, I reviewed the cask strength version of this, which impressed me a lot. It's, as a brand, a single malt brand, it's a very good, accessible, integrity presented single malt, which, if you're starting off in whisky and you've had perhaps some Glenfiddich or Glenmorangie or Annoch or Glenlivet, which you've bought at the supermarket, it's one that you move on to next because it's got a lovely character to it. And although in the last couple of years there have been one or two batch issues, I'll come to that in another review soon. It is a pretty dependable and flavour-wise an accessible single malt. Very popular with those who know a thing or two about Scotch whisky. Right, pouring a glass. Always a good idea in a whisky review. Pouring a glass, I shall now smell it, taste it, and give you essentially an update from previous reviews from a few years ago on how I'm enjoying this whisky. Previous reviews, well, the last one of the 12-year-old was Ralphie Review 823, which I did in April 2020. So we're looking at 21, 22, about 2.5 years ago. Prior to that, I reviewed it again in Ralphie Review 574 back in March 2016, and prior to that, the first review of the 12-year-old was Ralphie Review 150, many years ago now, in September 2010. Yes, how time flies. I have a long history with this whisky, because when I first went in, oh hello my little, excuse me, meow, come here, come and say hello to the malt mates. Here's little Fluffy the cat. He's been away all day, gallivanting about the fields, with his big fluffy coat of fur. He isn't put off by the cold wintry weather we're experiencing at the moment. Are you, you little munchkin, you little pest? Yeah. Off you go then. I've put some fresh food out for you. Yeah. He's a lovely character. He's the smaller of my two cats. And he's the more temperamental one. He doesn't go for the big mice and the rabbits. He goes for the little voles, because that's what cats do. So he's a bit of a he's a bit of a timid one. Anyway, back to the review, because for whatever reason my cats just haven't got into whisky yet. They have a sniff occasionally from the glass and then look at me in complete disbelief as to why I would even consume such a thing. But there again, humans are odd creatures, a bit like cats actually, but not as furry. Well, most aren't as furry. I have a long history with Bunnahabhain. It goes back decades. In fact, it goes back to the 1980s when I went to a local bar in Glasgow, in the area in which I lived, called Partick. Lovely area, a lot of fond memories of Partick, because it was a prosperous working class area with a lot of traditional shops and quite a buzz within the local community, and a complete lack of pretension, unlike the area just up the road from Partick called Byres Road, which is essentially the heart of the West End of Glasgow, and a very bohemian area, where they sell quite a number of bottles of Bunnahabhain, I have to say, because people like to, in Scotland, they like to sort of broadcast their good taste by the more unusual and less obvious single malts that they buy. And that includes Bunnahabhain, because it isn't too demanding, it isn't peated, and it's got a strong cultural history with the Highland community, the Highland and Island community in Glasgow, from people who migrate from Islay, from Skye, from Harris, from Lewis, down to Glasgow, basically to look for work, because that's what you get in Scotland. So in my local bar, they had the original bottle of the 12-year-old, which at that time was bottled at 40%. It was chill filtered, but it was still a really nice single malt, because there wasn't a lot of demand for it. And at that moment in time, good quality casks were readily available at a cheap price. And Bunnahabhain Distillery was a very productive distillery in the 1980s, when other distilleries were kind of cutting back on their production. And it's essentially a brand of single malt that came down from the Highlands and Islands, particularly in the West Coast, of course. And it came down with the people. So you'd go into the bar and they didn't just have Glenfiddich and Glenmorangie. They would have this. And I found, because it's a malty type of whiskey, quite malt rich, it was really good to pair with the beer that I was drinking at the time called Younger's Number 3, which, funnily enough, is no longer available. And yeah, I miss it dearly. I really do. I had many good nights, evenings in the local bar with a glass of Bunnahabhain and a pint, just sitting, chatting to the locals, many of whom worked or knew people who worked in the Scotch whisky industry. So you got the insider information particularly when they were no longer sober. So cheers, folks. This is Bunnahabhain 12-year-old. Excellent. First nose, oily. You can almost smell the density of that soft sherry influence. Really good quality, Oloroso, but dominant. It's not a sherry overcoat. It's very well integrated in the natural maltiness that you get from Bunnahabhain. So it is not a typical style of whiskey that you would associate with Islay. In that respect, it's rather like Bruichladdich. Bruichladdich is lighter than Bunnahabhain, particularly when it's unpeated, when it's not in its Port Charlotte or in its Octomore mode. You get that lovely brininess, coastal, slightly salty note from Bruichladdich, and from Bunnahabhain you get that more of a Speyside note, a sweetness, a natural understated sweetness, and it even comes across as soon as you nose it. It's warming, it's rich, it's spicy, and what I'm smelling now just really makes me feel very nostalgic for the past, because what I'm smelling is exactly what I remember from 4 decades ago. Some things, you see, this is the thing about our sense of smell and taste. It's an excellent memory bank. And you'll find this yourself as time goes on. You'll come back to an old, familiar, friendly single malt that you have first met years and years ago. And it's like you're really just instantly rekindling an old acquaintance with a friend that is exactly the same as it was, that hasn't changed at all. Taste. A lot of energy in it. Rich. That's the first descriptor I would give. It's rich. Softly sherried. Oily. Creamy. Yeah, absolutely creamy. I'm going to put in half a teaspoon of water. So 2.5 millilitres. That'll be quite enough. And I must commend this whisky to you for the reason that it is natural coloured. So the colour in this whisky comes from the casks. There's no scorched sugar added for colourant. And it's unchill filtered. So it's an integrity bottling. It's bottled at 46 point, what's that? 5%. Excuse me. Steampunker, always have it handy. 46.3%. And this delivery, it just invigorates the entire experience. You see, I'm trying to use another form of descriptor here to try and show you the benefits of an integrity whisky. A whisky which is bottled above the legal minimum of 40%, is unchill filtered, so you get that additional mouthfeel which delivers additional flavour. And it isn't tainted with caramel colourant, which inevitably, one reason that the caramel is there is to hide the fact that there wasn't really a lot of active maturation from the casks. This is what you need to know. I've added the water now. A little bit of Scotch mist appearing in the glass. Doesn't take long, particularly when you're in a colder environment. A wonderful sweet and sour, malty, slightly chocolatey arrival. Develops spicy, a little bit of pickled ginger, some warm vanilla notes, a little bit more chocolatiness there, slight cocoa edge to it, so we're talking slightly more dark chocolate than milk chocolate. A touch of allspice, hint of cinnamon, and there's a touch of rose water in the latter part of the development going into the finish. The finish is soft, gentle. Think ginger jam, ginger conserve with soft tannins. Very elegant, and of course, because of the integrity of the delivery, the fact that it's higher strength and unchill filtered means that the whole event is more prolonged. You see, chill filtration shortens the delivery on the palate of a whisky, whereas non-chill filtration extends it, simply because of the viscosity of the spirit, the extra oiliness in it, and the density and the weight of the spirit coming from the presence of long chain fatty acids and the addition of the kind of the proteins in it. It just lasts longer, and while it's lasting, it delivers more complexity onto the palate. Very enjoyable. thoroughly enjoying this. Because I bought a bottle of the cask strength Bunnahabhain, I thereafter, because I enjoyed it so much, I went online from the online retailer, and in my next order I ordered a bottle of the standard 12-year-old. I could have bought it at some of the bigger supermarkets, where it's available. You will find this as a Scotch whisky fairly readily available, particularly in and around Europe and in the USA. If you see it, it's Ralphie recommended, straight from the bothy. Another wee taste before the malt mark. The slower you go, the further you get. Getting a little bit more wood note coming through. Lovely quality spicy oak. Amplifying the vanillas as well, the vanilla component. A little bit of muscovado. Slightly rum hint to it. And I'm thinking Jamaican rum. So there's a little bit of estery notes coming through in the development too. And it gives you, particularly if you've just recently started in whisky and you've started with the basics and you want to graduate onto the next level up, this is a great whisky to go with. I also recommend Arran and I also recommend Deanston. They are two other really good options which are going to get you off the starting line, because you're starting with the Glenfiddich, you're starting with the Glenmorangies, you're starting with what's available in the high street, and you're taking your journey that bit further. And this is a really good one to go with. There has been batch variations in the last about a year ago. It seems to have been temporary. Thank goodness. Something that the distillers have to be much more aware of and conscious of is people are identifying batch variations and quality, the quality of casks, the quality of the bottling, much more than they used to. And it is now, it's a cause of embarrassment when it happens to a brand, because there's a lot more conversation about it happening online. So there we go. I shall now give this a malt mark. It's going to be a good one. If you are buying a Christmas present or a New Year present for a whisky drinker and they have some experience under their belt, they've been drinking whisky for a few years, this would be, particularly if you're buying it as a non-whisky drinker, for a whisky drinker, this would be a really, really good one. I'm giving this 80, I was going to give it 85, but no. I'm being too mean. I'm going to up it right now. 87 out of 100. There you go. And that is a malt mark. It's also an integrity malt mark. The integrity has added another 2 points to this whisky. Because it matters. It really, really does. I'm Ralphie. I have completed my whisky review for you. I hope you found it useful, interesting and helpful. And if you pop back again to my next whisky review, 957 extras, I shall be talking about how you progress in educating your palate to appreciate quality and not quantity. Because single malts and other quality spirits, it's about the quality of what we consume, which will encourage us to consume less and more slowly, more thoughtfully, and with greater enjoyment. And if you enjoyed this video, subscribe. That's the word I was looking for. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. It's chock full of reviews. 957 so far, over 14, roughly about 14 years. And the journey is ongoing, because enjoying whisky is a journey. And this is what I'm really going to cover in my next review, this journey that we take. I also have a Patreon channel called Ralphie, Ralfy, and if you subscribe to that, you will get additional content, including the fact that I'll be doing a live stream, which I only do for Patreon subscribers, and it's coming up just next week from the Bothy, live, for 2 hours. My goodness. Now that is a moment. Bye.